Epilogue. Turns out I was right about the hidden Cumin thong. Our client wasn't too pleased with the damage yanking out a sink and its plumbing from a wall can do, but when we showed him the golden mummy baby as proof, he settled down right quick, especially when we explained to him that the Cumin thong, which had been cursed to the earth anyways, had been then used as an anchor for another more malicious spirit to cling onto. It was the crying of this specific baby, which later tests proved had been much older than any Cumin thong should be, 4 months old to be exact, that had disturbed his house so. The necromancer could only avoid karma for so long, and doing crap to innocent babies brought a heck of a lot with it. Ayako recovered and followed us back to Tokyo 3 days afterwards with a doctor's note to be on bed rest for the next few weeks. Her parents, who are doctors in case you've forgotten, were all too eager to suck her back home and enforce that rule. Monk filled her in on the action she missed, and she was more than impressed with me. I turned her off after she started saying something about having natural spiritual abilities on top of psychic talent, to which Takigawa just said, duh, how else could she do the 9 cuts? To which I realized I had totally forgotten about. In the heat of the moment, I just took to cussing the ghost down rather than doing any proper protective magic. I didn't want to know what that said about me. Naru told me anyways. It means you're a moron who runs on instincts and sentimentality. Good job. Another case solved by your tactless disuse of common sense. I would have thrown his tea into his face if I hadn't thought that his not firing me was an apology in and of itself. Of course, after being teased for falling asleep with me by Takigawa for a full 5 minutes before his could-kill-puppies glare shut the monk up, Naru kept to himself and said nothing even remotely related to what occurred between us during the case for a week. It didn't help that it was finals week and I had already asked for time off to study, nor was I comfortable enough to just call him up and start demanding why he hadn't hunted me down and kissed me senseless. There also was the small fear on my part that he had changed his mind about being with me after I had more or less grinded his face into his own guarded fear and insecurity. Saturday afternoon, with finals finished, I walked through the office door more apprehensive than I wanted to be. Outside, the cloudy sky and foggy air blended in with the snow and gray of the city. The door to Naru's office was closed, and I could hear the heater humming away. I bit my lip and peeled off my winter wear. Naru? You here? There was a creak of office chair, steps. Then my tall, dark, and handsome scientist appeared in his office doorway. Where else would I be? The data from our previous case is on your desk to be filed away. Please remember to put the temperature readings before the sonograms this time. Right. And some tea. Earl Grey. I sighed. So we were going back to before. Yes, sir. He moved to close the door but stopped. I had yet to move as well and kept my gaze somewhere between his navel and knees. What happened to the assertive Mai? I blinked owlishly. Eh? He had his head cocked to the side and that familiar smirk I knew all too well. Practically forced yourself on me with something about how I should just deal with it. Not exactly the most effective way to seduce a man, but then, if you weren't hopelessly clumsy, you wouldn't be my Mai. It took me a moment to register the whole mini-speech, but his widening smirk slapped some sense into me, and I didn't know whether to roar with relief or chuck my shoe at his fat head. I settled for a glare. I'd be careful with that delusion, sir. You're the one who kissed my teeth and panted about it afterwards. The smirk fell. It was his business face again. Don't you have a job to do? I don't know. Are we done here? Or do you want to practice your flirting more, because that was pathetic? I don't flirt. Sure. I don't even tease. Yeah. There was a pause in which we just stared each other down. I hung my hands on my hips and pouted. He closed his eyes, sighed, pinched the bridge of his nose, and leaned against the doorway. What do you want? Somehow his tired tone just irritated me further. What, so spending time with me was a burden now? Showing affection was a burden? What do you mean, what do I want? Always spelling it out with you, he grumped, then leveled a glare at me from beneath his eyebrows. I already told you I don't do romance. I don't read it, don't watch it, don't listen to it, don't do it. So if there's something you want me to do, you've got to tell me. I frowned. So, you want to, stay with me? Isn't that obvious? Not really? He dropped his hand and stared, incredulous. I could feel my well-built indignation melting. "What?" I asked. Haven't you listened to a word I've said?" Sighing again, he ran both hands through his hair and nudged the door the rest of the way open. "You're the only girl I've ever kissed, the only girl I've ever loved, the only girl I've even— I said I loved you, didn't I? Do you think I could just recant that overnight?" Flushed now and feeling more than a little fuzzy, I shrugged. "People do it all the time." "I'm not people." All right, fine. Best to not make this complicated." I pulled on a finger nervously. "Then I want you to tell me you love me frequently, because, you know, I'm stupid." He waited, all business, all stoic seriousness. I had to smile, to which his eye twitched. "Is that all?" he asked tersely. But that did it for me. I tipped my head back and laughed. Because my poor, precious, genius Naru, who was always several steps ahead and on top of everyone else, really didn't have a clue. He disappeared in a blink of an eye and slammed the door behind him. Such easily injured pride. "Oh, come on, Naru. I'm sorry for laughing." "Naru." I trotted breathlessly up to the door. "You have to admit, it's just a little bit funny." "Ugh, no, wrong thing to say. Bad my. Scratch that. Look, everyone feels a little lost with this sort of thing. It's sort of the nature of it." Nothing. I didn't even hear his chair squeak. I took a deep breath to rid myself of the rest of my giggles, because I knew he'd hear them in my voice whether I let them out or not. "Look, I don't know what I'm doing either. All I know is that I want to be with you all the time, and that I want you to be happy, completely happy, always happy, and maybe—" I hesitated, and then reconsidered the weight in which Naru gave to this particular subject. I couldn't see him being creeped out, and that was just another reason why I loved him. So I pressed on. "If you're okay with it, if you decide you want it, maybe getting married one day, have little Naru babies." I thought I heard the scuff of a shoe on carpet, but other than that, nothing happened. After standing there stupidly for a few more minutes, I bit my lip and decided I'd better get on with my job before I gave him another reason to be mad at me. First, I tended to the tea. While I waited for the water to boil, I took up the binder of data and flipped through the pages. Little golden mummies adorned the pages of some, and I hurriedly skimmed over them, feeling my face heat up. Why did I have to say Naru babies? Why? Oh, this would have gone so much smoother if we hadn't just finished a case with babies. I jumped at the shrill whistling of the teapot and quickly turned it off the burner. I poured the cup of Earl Grey 2/3 of the way before adding the honey and cream I knew he liked. Without warning, warm, strong arms slipped around my waist. I smelt sage as he buried his nose into my hair at the nape of my neck. "Are you people?" The question was so small I could have easily pretended not to hear it. I could hardly believe it as it was. This vulnerable part of Naru still seemed on the same level as unicorns and dragons, and yet at the same time I couldn't understand how I had missed it. I touched one of his hands. "No," I said. "Don't be so sure. I really am a cold person. Jean was much better at this. You'll always be free to leave, to go somewhere else. I couldn't stand it if I was the one, if you had an excuse to blame me for your miserable life." At the last second he saved himself, but it only made me smile, especially since I had heard the unspoken "please don't leave me" behind his first question. "I said I wasn't going to stop, didn't I? Now take your stupid tea and get over yourself, narcissist." He pulled away, and the touch of air on my back and waist felt colder than before. Before I could move to finish my job, his hands returned to turn me around and meet his dark blue eyes, which had a somewhat dangerous edge to them. His breath brushed across my face, lips parted. "That being said," he murmured, caging me in by gripping the counter behind me, "where'd you learn how to kiss?" "Google?" I'm not stupid. Though he was possessive as he proceeded to show me by giving me that long-awaited kiss-me-senseless session I'd been waiting for all week. And I hadn't been the one to use Google.